Hello, here I am again in the name of the sovereign creator of heaven and earth, the Lord Jesus Christ. I'm continuing with my exposition of my translation of Mark's Gospel. We've come to chapter 4 and verse 13. The Lord has started using parables. He gave the parable of the sowers that I call the parable of the soils. And in verse 12, he explained that the reason he uses parables now because the leadership have rejected him and it's for people not to understand. However, his disciples asked for an explanation, and they were privileged characters, but we get to get in on the explanation. So now I will read the explanation of the parable of the soils or of the sower, verses 13 through 20. Then he said to them, "Don't you understand this parable? How then will you understand all the parables? The sower sows the word. These are the ones where the word is sown along the path. As soon as they hear it, Satan comes and takes away the word that was sown in their hearts. Similarly, these are the ones sown on the rocky area. As soon as they hear the word, they receive it with joy, but since they have no root in themselves, they are temporary. When oppression or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away. And these are the ones sown among the thorns. They hear the word, but the worries of this age, the deceitfulness of wealth, and the undue desires for other things come in and smother the word, and it becomes unfruitful. And these are the ones sown on the good ground. Such people hear the word, welcome it, and produce fruit. 30 times as much, 60 times as much, even 100 times as much. For the moment. Now in verse 15, the Lord states a very serious truth. Satan comes and takes away the word that was sown in their hearts. I have a rather lengthy discourse on this subject because it is not something that has been adequately explained in our churches by and large. This statement is a continuation of that given in Mark chapter 3, verse 27. The Lord Jesus declares that it is impossible to steal Satan's goods unless we bind him first. From his use of, quote, no one, end quote, it seems clear that the Lord is enunciating a general principle or truth. And what might the nature of those goods be? Well, in the context, you can see in Matthew 12, verses 22 through 24 as well, Jesus had delivered someone from a demon that caused blindness and dumbness. And in their comments, the scribes and Pharisees include other instances where Jesus had expelled demons. Matter of fact, he did quite a bit of that. It seems clear that the goods are people who are subject to Satan's power in one way or another. Thus, we have the same essential truth, excuse me, as that declared in Acts chapter 26 and verse 18. We have to do something about Satan's power over a person so that he or she can be saved, even. Go back and check that. Acts 26:18. But what does Satan do to people that makes it necessary to bind him? We find the answer in 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 4. But let's begin with verse 3, which I will now read. If our gospel is veiled, it is veiled to them who are perishing, in whom the God of this age has blinded the minds of the unbelievers, so that the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God, should not shine in them, end quote. The text states clearly that Satan, the God of this age, is in the business of blinding the minds of unbelievers when they hear the gospel. So they will not understand. So they will not be convinced. So they will not repent and convert. Like, this is a terrible truth, the most terrible truth in the world, at least as I see it. The enemy has access to our minds. access in the sense that he has the power or ability to invade them, whether by introducing thoughts or by jamming our reasoning, or both. Now, sovereign Jesus declared this truth when he explained the parable of the sower. I'm coming back now to the sower, okay? These are the ones by the wayside where the word is sown, but as soon as they hear it, Satan comes and takes away the word that was planted in their heart. Same thing. In the parallel passage in Luke chapter 8 and verse 12, Jesus adds the following words, quote, lest they believe and be saved, end quote. Please note that the word is already in the mind or the heart of the person. Right? But then Satan comes, invades the mind, and takes away that word. I'm not sure just how this intrusion by the enemy works. Perhaps he causes a mental block of some sort. But the practical effect is that the word becomes ineffective, as if the person had not even heard it. As I said at the beginning, this is a very, very serious truth that the Lord has enunciated here. Unfortunately, most churches are not giving adequate teaching on that subject. Okay. Now we come to people on the rocky soil. Note that both with the stones and the thorns, the seed actually did germinate. There was life. Only for various reasons it didn't produce fruit. And the explanation here quite clear enough. The worries, deceitfulness, so on, undue desire, no problem. We can all understand that. Then the good ground. You'll notice that the results are not the same. Some people produce 30, others 60, a few, even up to 100. That depends on us, of course. No problem with the seed is the same. But whether we produce more or less is up to us. I link this verse to 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 11 through 15. There, remember building with wood, hay, stubble, gold, silver, precious stones. Everything has to go through the fire. Christians who do not live so as to contribute to God's kingdom are really building their lives with hay and straw. Many will not save even 30% of their lives in terms of what they have done in their lives. I have a little article about that in the appendix, Fire Loves Straw. You can check that later if you wish. Now we come to another parable, which is the candlestick. I'll read verses 21 through 25. Also he said to them, the lamp is not brought to be put under a box or under a bed, is it? Is it not to be placed on its stand? For there is no hidden that may not be exposed, nor has anything been concealed, but that it should come to light. If anyone has ears to hear, let him hear. Then he said to them, pay attention to what you hear. With the same measure you use, it will be measured to you in return. And to you who hear, more will be added, because whoever has, to him more will be given. Whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. For the moment, the lamp is not brought to be put under a box, etc. The reference here is to a peck measure. It could have been a box or a basket or a basin. The exact material is not specified, just how much it'll hold, the size of the measure, peck measure. Obviously, if you're going to have to light a lamp, of course, in those days it was a flame, okay, whether you had a little lamp or a candle. And of course, you're not going to put a flame under anything that can catch fire. Obviously, you don't do that in order to hide it. You light something like that to give light. And he says everything is going to be exposed. Okay, everything is going to be exposed. But now, what does he mean when he says, pay attention to what you hear? And in other places it says how you hear. The measure you use, the more effort you put into hearing, the more you will learn, the more you'll get, and so on. Now he says to you who hear, a clear implication is that there are those who won't or don't. This, those who hear is relevant to verse 25. Unfortunately, about 2% of the Greek manuscripts omit those who hear, and so many modern versions do that too. You know that story. Stay with the 98%. Whoever has, to him more will be given. Whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. I take the point to be this, that just to stand still spiritually is not an available option. Either we grow or we lose. If you don't use it, you lose it. I would say that spiritual growth is like riding up an incline on a bicycle without any brakes, no brakes. If you stop pedaling, you go backwards. You don't stop unless you get off the bike, okay? The same measure includes effort. Hearing implies doing something about it. We say, if a parent is scolding a child, did you hear? And the point, of course, is, are you going to do something about it? That's the idea. Even what he has will be taken away. If you stop going up, you start going back. Now we come to another little parable. Let's read verses 26 through 29. He also said, the kingdom of God is as if a man should scatter the seed on the ground, and should sleep and get up night and day, and the seed should sprout and grow. He himself does not know how. All by itself, the earth produces fruit, first a shoot, then a head of grain, then full grain in the head. But as soon as the grain is ready, he sends in the sickle because the harvest has come. And that's just the way it is. You see, we just do not understand how God works. We just don't. That's the fact. We just have to do our part, though. We have to do our part. And then the harvest will come. And the better we did our part, the more harvest there will be. A farmer doesn't know how, how do you know, how can a seed die, germinate, and produce? That's a mystery. Yeah, we don't know. We don't understand how the way it grows. And plants are marvelous things, just by the way. Plants are marvelous things. That's another story. Anyway, same way we just don't understand how God is working most of the time, because he doesn't tell us most of the time. We have to live by faith and work by faith. Now we get to the mustard seed, verses 30 through 32. Again he said, to what shall we compare the kingdom of God? Or with what sort of parable should we illustrate it? It is like a mustard seed, that when it is sown on the ground is the smallest of all such seeds. Yet when it is grown, it grows up and becomes larger than all the garden herbs and produces big branches, so that the birds of the air are able to rest in its shade for the moment. Now you may be aware that verse 31 has been used by enemies of the Bible to argue that this is a problem, that this is an error of fact. Depending, there are versions that unfortunately say it's the smallest seed on the earth, and that is not a good translation. That's not what the Greek text has. It is the smallest of all such seeds, that is to say, the seeds that they normally planted in the garden. The Lord was not making a global botanical statement about all the seeds in the world. No, 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 no. He was just talking about what you normally plant in your garden. And you have to think about what they planted in their garden at that time. And one of the things was mustard. And of those things, of course, the mustard seed was the smallest. There's a grammatical explanation, but I won't bother you with that right now. Just to make sure that you understand there's really no problem here. People who allege that they will have it, they're simply creating a fictitious problem. As you know, tobacco and orchid seeds and whatnot, they are actually smaller than a mustard seed. But in those days, you didn't plant an orchid in the garden, and most people would not plant tobacco in their garden either at that time. So, no problem. I have a short article on that in the appendix, but I won't bother you with it right now. Let's just read now verses 33 and 34 that will close the subject of the section on the parables. It was with many such parables that he was speaking the word to them as they were able to hear it. But apart from a parable, he did not speak to them. Privately, however, he would explain everything to his disciples. His disciples were privileged characters. As I've already explained, the Lord did not start using parables until the religious leaders formally rejected him as the Messiah. At that point, then he started using parables, and the declared reason was so that people wouldn't understand. Therefore, you should never base a doctrine on a parable, because the point of the parable is for you not to understand it. Unless the Lord interprets it. Look, if he interprets it, then you can base the doctrine on the Lord's interpretation. That's it. No more. Okay, now we go on to something else. We're going to have a supernatural tempest. Let's read verses 35 through 41, which will bring us to the end of chapter 4. On the same day when evening had come, he said to them, that's to the disciples, let us go across to the other side. Since he was already in the boat, they took off with him, leaving the crowd behind. Parenthesis, other little boats were also with him. Close parenthesis. Well, a strong cyclonic wind came up, such that the waves beat into the boat, so that it was already filling up. But he, it's Jesus, he was on the poop deck, sleeping on the cushion. So they awakened him and said to him, Teacher, don't you care that we are perishing? Then, having been awakened, he rebuked the wind and said to the sea, Shut up, be muzzled. So the wind stopped, and there was a complete calm. And he said to them, Why are you so afraid? How is it that you have no faith? They were terrified and started saying to one another, Who can this be that even the wind and the sea obey him? For a moment. Apparently the Lord had been teaching from the boat so that people couldn't get too close to him. So when he said, okay, let's go over to the other side. Go back to chapter 4, the first one of chapter 4, you'll see that he was already in the boat. Just by the way, I would say that the explanations that you'll find in chapter 4, verses 10 through 20, those explanations doubtless happened later. But the author included them here because that was the place to include them, to help our understanding. Okay. Now, we have this little bit here within parentheses at the end of verse 36, other little boats were also with him. I don't know why Mark mentioned those other boats. Maybe some of the crowd had come in them. They were on the water listening. But in any event, it seems quite clear that they did not attempt to follow him across the lake. If they were smaller little boats, it would have been very dangerous for them to attempt that. Okay. A strong cyclonic wind came up. Probably this was not a normal wind. You had professional fishers in that boat. They made their living on that lake. They knew all about that lake. They had seen no end of storms on that lake. But this one was not a normal storm. In fact, it was filling up the boat. They were scared. Probably it was a supernatural storm cooked up by Satan in an effort to kill Jesus. Because Satan knew where he was going. Jesus was going to the other side to take care of one of Satan's pet projects, and Satan tried to hinder that by killing Jesus on the way. Only it didn't work. It says here that Jesus, verse 38, was sleeping on the cushion. In keeping with the size of the boat, the poop deck was probably just big enough for someone to lie down on it, and they had a pillow or a cushion of some kind. You have to understand that Jesus was not down inside the boat because the boat was filling up. He would have been awakened by the water in that case, be covered by the water if he hadn't gotten up. But he was really worn out. The storm didn't bother him. It did not wake him up. They probably had to shake him, actually, make him wake up. And they figured they were on their way out. They figured they were going to die. The water was filling the boat. Well, Jesus didn't appreciate being disturbed. That's a very interesting business. He just tells the wind and the weather, shut up, be muzzled. No, quit. That's what he said. But what he actually said was that, shut up, be muzzled, like he was talking to a wild animal or something. And the wind stopped and there was a complete calm. I want you to understand that there was a double miracle here. First, he made the wind stop short. Okay, miracle number one, the wind stops. But once water is agitated, it takes a while to calm down, even if the cause is gone. So Jesus did a second miracle. That is, he took care of the consequences of the wind, just neutralized the consequences. And all of a sudden, the water was smooth. I don't know if you've ever lived near a large body of water where you can have seen this by yourself. When I was working with an Indian tribe in the Amazon jungle, it was near the Purus River, and at the point where that was, it's about half a mile across, a kilometer across, and the Purus River will handle ocean-going vessels all the way up to a point above where I was. And one day I just happened to be out in town. The Indian village is about an hour's walk away from the town, back into the jungle. They were tame, no problem. I was standing on the shore, just I don't remember why. All of a sudden, a Corvette, that's the smallest of your military boats, and they're fast. They're one of the fastest boats there are, and they were in a hurry. They were charging up the river, and the wave, the wave from the bow was at least a meter high or a yard high. Huge waves, and just well, there aren't any streets there. Everyone gets around with a canoe, and there were canoes on both, tied up both sides of the river. And I watched the Corvette had gone around the next curve, it was out of sight. I watched the waves. The waves went and hit the banks, and then they came back again. all the way, so on. I probably stood there at least 10 minutes, if not 15. And it took that long for finally the water, just those waves to be gone. And this is a river. There was a current there. Even in spite of the current, these ripples, these waves, took 10 minutes to calm down. So I want you to understand that the Lord did, in fact, work two miracles. The second miracle was to smooth out the water, because normally that does not happen just like that. It takes a while, even if the cause stops. Okay, two miracles, right? That's not the only time that the Lord did that. As a matter of fact, in 1 John chapter 3 and verse 8, if I recall, it's up to us to undo Satan's work. That's another story, but it's the same sort of a thing, undoing the consequences. Now, the Lord obviously had expected them to do something about this. He said, why did you bother me? In other words, why are you so afraid? Where's your faith? Come on, you should have done something yourselves. What if we had been in that boat? Would we have done any better? I think the Lord is saying that to us often, more often than not, lots of times. What we are calling out to God to do is stuff that we are supposed to be doing. And God sort of probably gets tired of hearing us. Look, if he was going to talk to us about it, he said, would you kindly stop bugging me about that? That's up to you to do. Get on with it. Do it. You do it. That's what he would say. Remember the feeding of the 5,000 men, women and children, whatnot? What did Jesus say? He said, you feed them. With what? Jesus said, you feed them. With 5 loaves and 2 fish. There's a whole lot more to the story than we are used to thinking, I would say. We're like that, though. When unexpected things happen to us, we usually do not respond in faith. We get all shook up and worried and whatnot, and call out to God. When actually we have authority, we have power, we could do something about it, but we forget. Satan likes to catch us by surprise. Okay, let's go back here. I frankly have trouble understanding verse 41. These guys, look, they had been around Jesus. They had seen him heal everything that there is to be healed. They had seen him even raise dead. They had seen him do. So they say, now who can this be that even the wind and the sea obey him? All right, what are the options? What are the options? A human being? An angelic being? Good or bad? Or God? Okay, one of the three. One of the three options. Okay, but who can turn water into wine? Who can cleanse lepers? Who can raise the dead? Probably God, right? It's interesting that somehow it just didn't get in. Well, how long does it take us to learn? Well, we are slow learners too, aren't we? Now we come to the legion. I will read verses. Well, I'll have to read verses 1 through 13. That's just the way it is. Chapter 5. Then they came to the other side of the sea, to the region of the Gadarenes. And when he got out of the boat, right away a man with an unclean spirit met him coming from the tombs. He had his dwelling among the tombs. No one could bind him, not even with chains, because he had often been bound with shackles and chains, only to have had the chains torn apart by him and the shackles broken in pieces. No one had been strong enough to tame him. Always, night and day, in the tombs and in the mountains, he was crying out and cutting himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and kneeled down to him, and with a loud cry, he said, What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I implore you, by God, don't torment me. Because he, Jesus, was saying to him, you unclean spirit, come out of the man. Then he, Jesus again, asked him, what is your name? And he answered, saying, Legion is my name, because we are many. He started begging him repeatedly that he would not send them out of that region. Now a large herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside. So all the demons begged him, saying, send us into the pigs, so that we may enter them. And forthwith Jesus gave them permission. And coming out, the unclean spirits went into the pigs. There were about 2,000. But the herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea, and they were drowned by the sea. Okay, now we have several things that need comment here. And the first is right in the first verse. Mark says they came to the region of the Gadarenes. A very small handful, about 0.3%. That's 5 manuscripts out of about 1,700. Those 5 manuscripts are of objectively inferior quality. Those 5 pitiful manuscripts have Gerasenes instead of Gadarenes, as in most modern versions. You know, they are following 5 bad manuscripts against 1,700 better ones. Well, Gadara, being the Roman capital of the province of Ferrara, located some 6 miles from the Sea of Galilee, the region of the Gadarenes is a perfectly reasonable description of the site, especially since Mark was writing for a Roman audience. Romans would know about the province of Ferrara, and that there was the capital city of that province was Galilee. Some Romans would know that. Now, I have an article about this in the appendix, and the question is of sufficient importance that I'm going to take time to bother you with this explanation. It's in my appendix. If you have a copy of my New Testament, that's the 3rd edition. In the 3rd edition, it's number 59. It's called The Legion and the Pigs. Where was it? Now, I'm going to have to talk about it's not the prophets, Alan, not 52, it's 59. The Legion and the Pigs, where was it? Thing is that we have different accounts. In Matthew, chapter 8 and verse 28, we have 98% saying they were calling the place the Gergesenes. 2% have the Gadarenes, as in most modern versions. The NIV everywhere has a nasty footnote. Says some manuscripts Gergesenes, others Gerasenes. Happens that in Matthew no manuscript has Gerasene, but don't worry about that. That's the way the NIV footnotes are sometimes. In Mark, where we have right now, we have 95.5% of the manuscripts have Gadarenes, 4.1% have Gergesenes, and 0.3% have the Gerasenes, which is what you find in the modern version. In Luke 8:26, you have 97% have Gadarenes, 2% have Gergesenes, again 0.3% have the Gerasenes as the modern versions. Also in Luke 8:37. John doesn't handle this particular problem. Now, I want to talk about this so you can understand why Matthew says something different, okay? Mark and Luke have Jesus coming to the region of the Gadarenes, and that's a very good reason for that. Why does Matthew say Gergesenes? And that's 98% of the manuscript, so no question. So I want you to understand what's going on. Okay, so if you have access to my account, you can read, but Alan is putting it on the screen there. I will begin with Mark. Jesus arrived at the region, not the province, of the Gadarenes. As I've said, Gadara was the capital city of the Roman province of Ferrara, located six miles from the sea. He was writing to a Roman audience, and that would make sense to them. And then we have this pitiful eclectic text. Okay, let's move on though. Luke has also Jesus arriving at the region of the Gadarenes. Since he was writing for a Greek audience, he follows Mark's example. Mark was written first, published before Luke. Again, we have NIV with their nasty footnotes, a dishonest footnote. It's most likely that Gerasa is a fiction, a place that never existed. On the other hand, Gergesa certainly did exist, although we no longer know the exact location, as I will explain while discussing Matthew below. I have no doubt that it was a village near the spot where Jesus landed. Now, Matthew, as I've explained, clearly wrote Gergesenes rather than Gadarenes. Since Matthew, was writing for a Jewish audience, and many Galileans would be quite familiar with the Sea of Galilee, he provided a more localized description. Further, try to picture the events in your mind. Do you suppose that those swineherds ran 6 miles to Gadara? The populace would certainly not run the 6 miles back. All of that would have taken entirely too long. To me, it is obvious that there was a village close by, probably within half a mile, called precisely Gergesa, as Matthew says. And it was to that village that the swineherds ran, told their story, and brought the residents back. Galileans familiar with the Sea of Galilee would certainly recognize Gergesa. Just by the way, not only does Matthew name a different place, he affirms that there were actually 2 demonized men. Mark and Luke mention only one. He was a former tax collector, okay, and numerical precision was important to him. But notice that neither Mark nor Luke used the number 1. They simply said that there was demonized men. They simply commented on the more prominent of the 2. Obviously, 2 men, but the boss demon, who answered Jesus, I am Legion, so on, he would be in one of the 2 men, okay? And for the one of the man that had the boss demon, he was the more important of the 2. He was the one that wanted to go with Jesus and so on. Jesus sends him back. So Mark and Luke only talk about him, no problem. Okay, where am I now? All right, that was the legion and the pigs. Now let's go back to our text. We're back in Mark chapter 5. And I'm commenting on what we have here. Now, this demon, actually, there were a whole bunch of demons. Whether there were 2,000 demons or not, we don't know. There were 2,000 pigs. They said legion, and a Roman legion was 6,000 men. Normally, a legion would be about half strength, but even so, that's 3,000. There was a scad of demons, all right. We don't know exactly how many there were. There were 2,000 almost pigs. It doesn't say that there was 1 demon per pig. We just don't know that. But this guy, this demon, was not an ordinary demon. He just could not tie him up. They tried with chains and whatnot. Just broke the chains. And Matthew says that it was dangerous to go near there because these 2 men made it dangerous. No one could handle them. In other words, the local populace did not have a solution for this problem, and it was a problem. Notice it says here, they cut himself with stones. Now, here in Brazil, where I am, where Spiritism and Satanism are right out in the open, there's no secret about that. This sort of thing is well known. They know all about this sort of thing. The demons can heal their own victims if they cause a problem, but they can then heal it or handle it so that the person doesn't become incapacitated or stay incapacitated. So that happens here. This is something that we know about. Okay. But all of a sudden, when he sees Jesus, he comes running, kneels down to him. Isn't that interesting? Like this is one powerful demon. All right, this is a big bad demon, boss of who knows how many lesser demons under him. Does he challenge Jesus? No, sir. Thank you very much. He comes and he kneels. That is to say, he makes the man kneel. All right, okay. And he is afraid. He's afraid. He knows who Jesus is. He says, "You're the Son of the Most High God. I'm imploring you by God." Now, ain't that cute? A demon imploring by God. Oh, oh, but who else is he going to appeal to? He has recognized that Jesus is the Son of God. No point appealing to Satan. He knows that Jesus will be greater. So he appeals to Jesus through his Father. Pretty shrewd, okay? Maybe the demon wasn't all that stupid. Okay, probably Satan had informed the demon of the failed effort with the storm and whatnot. But he pleads, "Don't torment me." Well, he knew something that we don't know usually. And where it says here uh, in verse 10, they beg him, the demons beg him not to send him out of the region. I think it's in Luke. It says they beg him not to send him to the abyss. They knew something that most American Christians, most Christians don't know. We haven't been taught about this. It's in the Bible, but we haven't been taught about it. Now, here in Brazil, at least, this business about Jesus asking the demon's name has caused needless confusion. We now have, here in Brazil, there are churches where they cast out demons and so on, but in many places they think they've got to know the name of the demon before they can cast it out. And so they go through a whole rigmarole, song and dance, trying to find out the name of the demon. And this is their biblical basis for it, because Jesus asked, "What is your name?" Now, come on. Did Jesus know or did he not know the demon's name? Certainly he knew the demon's name. So why did he ask? I take it that Jesus asked the guy's name precisely so it would be registered in the sacred account for us to understand that demon infestation occurs. Because this was a boss demon, but under him there were scads of other demons. And we have to understand that. We need to know that this sort of thing happens, exists, so we will be prepared to handle it if it ever comes to our attention. Anyway, Legion. Here, they also beg not to be sent to the abyss, but here they beg not to be sent out of the region. We can understand that demons are territorial. You'll see that also in Daniel chapter 10. Just by the way, go to Daniel chapter 10. You'll see that demons are territorial. Okay, now what? The demon, the pigs. Now in verse 12, we have all the demons begging Jesus. And at the beginning, it was mainly the boss demon who was doing the talking. But now, all of a sudden, the whole gang of demons start begging, "Send us into the pigs." They didn't want to be without a house. Uh, Demons evidently like to have a house. They're spirit beings, okay, but when they're down here dealing with us, anyway, they would rather have a pig than nothing. "Send us into the pigs." And Jesus said, "Okay, go ahead." So off they went into the pigs. About 2,000 pigs. But the herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea, and they were drowned by the sea. You know that pigs can swim, right? Did you know that? Pigs can swim. So this was strange for all those pigs to die, get drowned. This was quite something strange. Now look, who made the pigs run down into the sea? Not the demons. No? That would have been totally counterproductive for the demons. They wanted another house. They're not going to destroy their new house. I just really don't think it was the demons. Maybe it was the pigs by themselves. Maybe the pigs preferred death to being controlled or infested or indwelt by a demon. Did you know that animals often show better common sense than people do? You know that, don't you? Animals are often more common sense than people. They don't do some of the stupid things that people do. Now, you may remember that the law of Moses, forbids eating pork. Okay, that's a no-no. You don't do that. So these people were not Jews, they were Gentiles, and they were into pork. Pigs were their livelihood. They were selling pork. Well, Jesus would himself not at all be sad to see all those pigs die. The text simply doesn't say, well, was it Jesus who made the pigs run into the well, we just simply don't know. Was it the pigs themselves that would rather die than have a demon? I doubt that it was the demon. Anyway, bye pigs. So now let's go on with the story. Let's read verses 14 through 17. So those who were tending the pigs ran off and reported it in the town and the countryside. And the people, went out to see what it was that had happened. They came to Jesus and observed the man who had been demonized, who had the legion, sitting and clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. Those who had seen it related to them how it happened to the demonized man and about the pigs. Then they began to implore him to depart from their borders. As I've said, these people lived in a little village nearby, Gergesa. There was no problem. The swineherds ran, told them the bad news. They came running to see what it was. And to see this demonized man that had been such a problem for someone just sitting there, he's quiet, he's calm, he's clothed. Like, wow. They were afraid, and they had good reason to be afraid. Obviously, they were in the presence of a supernatural power. But you see, those pigs were that was their economy. The loss of those pigs was a severe blow to their local economy. So obviously, Jesus was a dangerous sort of a person to have around, please. Actually, the pigs were more important to them than that demonized man. Sure. They were coexisting with the demonized men, and they had these pigs, all right. So please go away. And so far as we know, the Lord did go away, and he never went back. They didn't want him, told him to go away, he went away. Now let's finish off this story. It's in verses 18 through 21. Well, upon his getting into the boat, the man who had been demonized started begging him that he might be with him. But Jesus did not permit him, but said to him, go home to your family and report to them how much the Lord has done for you, and he had mercy on you. So he departed and began to proclaim in Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all were marveling. Now when Jesus had crossed over again by boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered to him, and he was by the sea. So verse 21, now he's back on the side of Gennesaret and Capernaum and so on. So obviously of the two men that Matthew mentions, one of them is the most important, and he's the one who wants to stay with Jesus here. He wants to, hey, let me stay with you and go along. Jesus said, nope. I want you to go back to your family where you come from and just tell them all about it. Tell them what the Lord has done for you. Just by the way, the text has Lord, not God. Actually, Jesus was speaking Hebrew, probably. Probably used God's personal name, Jehovah. Anyway, look at verse 20. What did the man do? He says how much Jesus had done for him. He gives Jesus the credit. All right. Later on, And remember, when he goes to Tyre and Sidon, and when he comes back around the top side of the lake, exactly through that reef. And that was when the 4,000, he fed the 4,000 and so on. That was probably a little bit farther up above on the lake rather than just where this happened to pigs and whatnot. Because here, the people says don't come back, and as far as we know, he never went back to that exact spot. Okay, that's it. Next video, we will take up the woman with the hemorrhage and then the dead girl, Jairus' daughter, and so on. That's it for this time. Thanks for watching, and God bless.